The one thing I've really learned, and this is so true, people that are hating on you are hating on you because you're doing better than them. You're doing something that they're jealous of, that they're envious of. You don't ever look at a person who's down on the ground, who's struggling, who's trying their best, who's just not really having success, and you don't kick them when they're down. Most people don't. They shit on the people that are doing better than them. So if you're getting hated on, it's because you're doing something right.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, how are you?
Good.
I'm Rachel Luba, and I'm a sports agent and attorney. I grew up in Monterey, California.
Good morning, San Francisco. I love this city. This was the closest city I always had growing up.
Young Rachel was very disciplined, very determined, and incredibly stubborn. I always wanted to play with the boys. And that's kind of a theme, I think, throughout my life and my childhood. I think I remember in 3rd grade, we had to write papers on what we wanted to be when we grew up. And at the time, I wanted to be the first female Navy SEAL in 3rd grade. I went to a really small private school. There were about 14 girls, 14 boys. My brother was in the same class as me, so we were basically like twins. I played tackle football. I guess don't tell the principal because we weren't supposed to play tackle, but I played football with them, and I used to kind of roll my eyes at the girls in a sense, and they equally did not like me because of that. I never wanted to be a part of kind of the girls. I didn't think they were tough enough. I think my childhood wasn't maybe quite the same as most kids just because of gymnastics and competing at kind of the elite level, but I think it really shaped who I am.
What's your favorite activity that you go to after school?
Gymnastics.
You like gymnastics the best?
During my childhood, it was my identity. I was a gymnast from the age of 2 through college, so that really took up a majority of my life. I did other sports for a little bit. I did karate. I also played piano, things like that. And then the more the training kind of progressed in gymnastics, the more I had to kind of make choices and sacrifices of what I wanted to do. And gymnastics was just kind of what I kept sticking to. But I have a love-hate relationship with that sport now. I sacrificed so much, and the sport, I think, has evolved in a lot of great ways now, and it is a much healthier sport. But I would say that it was also, when I did it, it was a very abusive sport in a lot of ways, mentally, physically, emotionally. I loved the sport, I think, but I would come home so many days in tears, but I never walked away from it. And something important to kind of note is my parents never pushed me to do it. They were never the parents that were like, you have to do gymnastics, and you can't quit, and you have to be the best. They simply said, you can't quit on a bad day. Gymnastics is year round, but there is a competition season. So when you start the competition season, you have to finish it. Failure is a huge part of gymnastics. You can't learn a skill by not first failing, failing hundreds of times, sometimes thousands of times. It's like a formula. You start out by doing it, and you get spotted, someone helps you do it, and then you start out from there just falling on your face over and over. And when I say falling on your face, I mean quite literally falling on your face. You just know that you have to fall on your face hundreds or thousands of times before you finally stick it perfectly. And then you start practicing sticking it perfectly over and over again until you become really good at the skill. I don't think I ever viewed failure as a negative thing. It was just a part of the process. I was pissed, I was mad, I was frustrated. Sometimes I felt defeated in a way when I wasn't perfect or when I didn't succeed. I don't think I was ever the most talented gymnast. I had teammates that were, I think, far more talented than I was, but I always kind of outlasted all of them because I wanted to be the best, because I would go home and sleep in the splits so that, when I came back the next day, my splits were perfect. I'd go home at night, or, if I had a Sunday off, I would go on my grass lawn and practice flipping up the hill so I would be better at flipping, or, just things like that where I constantly was trying to be the best. So I had to kind of prove myself. Gymnasts peak at, usually 15, 16. The second your body starts to change and you go through puberty, you're on the decline. So you're asking children to train at the level and have the discipline that professional athletes have that are adults. And most professional athletes are adults. And there's this different level of kind of discipline and work ethic that you have as an adult and that you can feasibly have. And I think there has to be a level of manipulation in a way to get the kids to kind of sacrifice and give up their whole life and train so many hours and put your body through so many grueling things. When we didn't stick a routine, it was like you were punished physically. And there were times where, the punishment might be climbing ropes 50 times to the point that your hands were bleeding. I look back and I'm like, well, my hands bleeding, I don't think made me a better gymnast. I understand, punishing a gymnast through making them stronger, right? Like giving them strength exercises or things like that. But sometimes I think the punishments were like just purely to hurt you, to make you learn your lesson and be better. Gymnastics kind of warps your view on your body. It's a sport. There are a few sports out there, but not many, where it doesn't just matter what you do, but it's how you look doing it that matters. So, for example, in softball, if you hit a home run, it's a home run. It doesn't matter what your hair looks like. It doesn't matter how big you are, how thin you are, how strong you look, how weak you look. It's a home run, and that's all anyone cares about. In gymnastics, if two people do a flip on the beam and stick it perfectly, the one who has prettier lines, like whose body just looks prettier, is going to get the higher score. And you're training basically naked every day. I mean, you're wearing a small leotard or a sports bra and shorts. And when you're little, like when I was young, up until I ended up like tearing a tendon in my foot, and I had surgery, and then I just couldn't obviously do as much cardio. So that was actually like around the time when I think my body started going through puberty. But, I became more of like a woman, and my body changed a little. And suddenly that was bad. And I remember, my coach looked at me and kind of like hit my stomach and was like, suck it in. He was like, not everybody is blessed with a body like. And he pointed to one of my younger teammates who was 7 at the time. And I was 16, like 17. And yeah, my body's not blessed to be like a 7-year-old's body. So, I mean, there were just little things like that. I would tumble and my wrist would hurt. And, they'd say, well, if you lose 5 pounds, maybe your wrist won't hurt as much. At that age, after I had started going through puberty, as a gymnast, I mean, I'm 5 feet tall, but I weighed like 125 pounds, so just a lot of muscle. The lowest I got was like 89 pounds, and I looked like a 7-year-old again. But then I remember getting to that point, and my wrist would hurt because my body, like I didn't stop training as much or anything. My body is now breaking down. And my coach would say, well, maybe if you gain 5 pounds, your wrist won't hurt. And it was just like, you can't win. I have a great relationship with both my parents. My mom and I growing up didn't have the closest relationship. We're actually much, much closer now. My mom, and I just butt heads, I think, a lot growing up. I'm a lot like my mom in so many ways. She's incredibly driven, incredibly stubborn, incredibly disciplined. I see her in myself all the time, and the older I get, the more I see it. My stubbornness and my drive and the perfectionist in me really comes from probably my mom. My dad and I were super close. He worked really hard. He had his own practice and, but still he came to all my gymnastics meets and he was there for me, and he just was kind of the person I went to. And he and I would paint nails together. He'd always paint my nails, and he'd learn from the women in his office that worked at like the front desk there's this one lady who had these beautiful nails, and he would learn from her of like how to paint my nails. And that was like something we did together. And I talk about how I was very tomboyish as a little kid, but my dad in a lot of ways like almost like fostered and brought out like the girly side in me too, which I think is kind of unique. I was being recruited by several schools, and I actually early on committed to Cal, and that's where I was gonna go. Growing up though, my dream school was always like, I think since like 5th grade, was to do gymnastics at UCLA. But I had gotten an offer from Cal early, and I'm like, well, Cal's a great school, and that seems like a good fit for me. So I committed there, but I was applying to schools anyways, even though I committed there. And I decided, because the UCs, you can just check all the boxes for just all of them. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna check UCLA too, because I just love UCLA. It was also a special school to me because, it's a little tangential, but my brother, who's a year younger than me, he had brain surgery there when he was 2. He had part of his brain taken out, and he was one of the first 50 in the world to have it done. It was at UCLA. So that's a little tangential, but UCLA, there was something like special to me. And it was a great gymnastics program. So I applied to UCLA, and I just happened to get in. And then right towards the end of the school year, I had an anonymous kind of source who had ties to the high school I went to and to Cal, had called me and said, I want you to know that Cal is cutting their gymnastics and their baseball program because of like monetary reasons, financial reasons. So I thought long and hard about it, and I was like, well, if I'm not going to be doing gymnastics at Cal, like I don't want to go to Cal. And I had gotten into UCLA, and I was at this weird point in my life where I was suffering from an eating disorder. My body was breaking down. I was nearly hospitalized several times. Like, I didn't know where my identity was, even with gymnastics. And so I just decided at the last minute to rescind my commitment to Cal, and I decided to go to UCLA. UCLA is actually where I was able to recover from my eating disorder through the help of the head coach at the time, Miss Val, who is an incredible human. With the help of her and the sport of gymnastics, the sport that in a way broke me almost like healed me too. I had a lot of injuries growing up. I don't think any gymnast goes through the sport without injuries. I still have tears in both my shoulders that have never gotten fixed, and that's really what kind of ended everything in college, and I ended up like medical retiring. I think I was relieved to be done with the sport. I think my body had been through the ringer. My mental state, like emotionally, I had been through it. I had overcome a lot, suffered a lot, and I think after 20 years, like I was ready to almost enjoy life again. But I also felt lost in some ways. I was Rachel Luba, the gymnast. It was a weird time for me. I didn't want to stop wearing my like UCLA gymnastics stuff. I want everybody to know like I'm a gymnast and that's who I am. And then I realized that I will always be a gymnast, but it was also nice to almost be able to develop this new identity. And there are still now, like most people do know I was a gymnast, but there are some people that have no idea that I was a gymnast, and it's kind of cool that I have this new identity. So I ended up in boxing after gymnastics, and my parents were very confused at that transition and like, oh my God, you put us through 20 years of anxiety for you and your body and everything, and boxing's what you chose? I think there are kind of two types of gymnasts that when they retire, they either don't want to do anything athletic for a long time ever again, or they're so used to being athletic and doing something that they have to find something else. And I definitely was the latter. I think I've always just kind of wanted to push boundaries, and if it hasn't been done, then I kind of look at it as like, well, cool, I want to do it. I don't do anything without it being like uber competitive and just going all the way. So within a couple months, I was like, I'm gonna register for my first fight. I won it by TKO, which was cool. And then kind of just went from there, and I boxed through law school. I never really followed baseball that closely growing up because my whole life was gymnastics. And, I would say I was a casual fan of the San Francisco Giants. But, I'd go to a handful of games in my childhood, and that was the extent of it. So I ended up becoming a baseball agent because when I was at UCLA as a gymnast, I still wanted to work in sports, but I was trying to figure out what's kind of the career path that I want to go. And I started thinking of different things that I could do in sports. And the idea of representing athletes came across the table of like, this is something you can do. So they tell you that you should talk to people in the industry that you think you want to go into and hear their experience and how some advice they have or different paths you can take to get into it. So naturally, I did that. And the first agent that I talked to, I went into his office and I sat down with him, and I remember he kicked his feet up on his desk, kind of like leaned back and was like, I've heard a little about you. Seems like you kind of think you know what you want to do, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's like, you're a girl. And I was like, yep. And we just stared at each other, and it was pretty awkward. He's like, well, what I'm saying is you're not really welcome in this industry. And then I kind of like stopped and I was thinking like, is he being serious? And he just like stared at me with a straight face. And I was like, okay, is that it? And he was like, look, the reality is it's a boys' club. And that's just the truth. And I was like, okay, well, is there anything else? Like, do you have any advice for me? And he said, look, like if you want any chance at having any shot of credibility, my advice would be like, you're gonna need to be a lawyer. So I walked out of there and I texted my parents and I was like, I'm gonna go to law school. And I credit that guy for being the reason I chose baseball, because I think if he had said to me, this is what the industry is like, here's some different avenues to get in. Obviously people take different paths to break into the industry. There's not, one size fits all. I probably would have walked out of there and said, thanks so much. And I would have then tried to set up a meeting with an NFL agent and an NBA agent and an NHL agent. But I stopped there because he said, you can't do it. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm gonna do then. So that's why I chose baseball. And then I had to learn the sport. I spent a lot of time. I had some close friends who were incredibly helpful throughout my journey, who were mentors to me. My pitching coach, Seth Moyer from UCLA at the time, he'd take me to games, we'd study. He ended up being a scout as well. I would go to games with him, with another scout friend that I had. I'd pick their brain, like, what are you looking at? What are you, seeing in this pitcher or this hitter? And just trying to learn the sport from the inside. And I think it brings a fresh perspective to it, honestly. But that's really how I ended up deciding to become a lawyer and to become a baseball agent. It is a good old boys club. I think it's slowly shifting. Women are slowly making their names in the sports world. And, there are women that came before me. But I think one of the biggest differences, the women before me, in a lot of ways, were in the shadows. They didn't get credit for anything. They dressed the way that we were told that women should dress if you want to be taken seriously. And they kept their heads down and they stood in the background and they didn't get credit. And I think one of the things that's been important to me is to show other women and show young girls that here we are. These are the things we're accomplishing. Almost taking the credit, because if we don't take it, no one's going to give it to us. And using my social media in a very strategic way to serve as like a voice or an example for younger girls to see, like, this is something you can do. I think a lot of young girls see that I could be a sideline reporter because they see women on TV doing that. But they don't have anyone to point to necessarily as like a woman who is a scout, an agent, a front office exec, because they just were in the shadows. And so I think a big part of my social media and becoming a baseball agent has also been to help amplify and show that women are here and this is what we do. I definitely have gotten to points where you have to stop and think, like, what the hell am I doing? The first pivotal point for that for me was I had graduated law school a semester early, taken the bar exam, passed it like first try, and was unemployed for like 8 months, didn't have a job. And my parents were asking me, like, what are you doing? You've always been this like overachiever, and now it's been 8 months and you're unemployed. You're a lawyer and what are you doing? And I was very private about it at the time too, because I was so determined that this is what I'm gonna do. And I didn't really talk to my parents about it, and they were getting frustrated and like, you need to get a job in a law firm, or, just go be a lawyer in the meantime. And I absolutely refused. And I have young kids, like girls or people, talk to me about, the path in, and I caution them from doing what I did, because it's not necessarily the smartest thing. But that was my stubborn mentality of like, I'm not gonna take another legal job. This is what I'm gonna do. But 8 months of not having a job and having door after door after door slammed in my face, it got frustrating. But again, like, I will be miserable in order to achieve a goal, and that's just always been me. I remember there was a period I actually went out, I was close and kept in touch with Trevor Bauer through college. He was one of the people that helped me learn the game because, he's a brilliant mind and the best person to learn. And he never doubted that I could be a baseball agent, even though I was a female. I think because he's not the stereotypical athlete either. And so he doesn't view things as like, well, you can't do that because you're not, like, you don't fit the mold. He doesn't fit the mold either. So he was from the beginning like, yeah, let me teach you. What do you want to know? I was visiting him. I went to watch one of his games in Cleveland, and I had met an expert agent advisor when I was in law school at a salary arbitration competition. So I was competing in a salary arbitration in law school, and he was my judge. And I have no problem saying this because I've told him this a million times. He was a dick to me. I was like the only female there, really. And I remember at the end, he was like, it was nice to meet you guys and girls. Should I say girl because you're here? And I just kind of looked at him like, okay. And he just like rubbed me the wrong way. And so anyways, after the competition, there was a raffle. And my teammate had bought me raffle tickets, and I won a signed Fergie Jenkins picture. And so I went up to get it, and he was standing there, the judge, and he said, "Can I have that?" And I was like, "I want it." And he was like, "Well," and he pulls out his wallet. He was like, "What do you need it for? Like, here's $20, it's fair market value. Like, why would you want that?" And I was like, "Well, I'll think about it." So I meet him out back. And I was like, all right, here's the deal. I was like, fair market value is $50. So either you give me $100 or you give me an internship, or I'll keep the Fergie Jenkins signed picture. And he kind of like looked at me, like smiled, and was like, okay, I like you. Like pulled out his wallet, gave me the money, gave me the card. And then we were really close after that. And I gave him the Fergie Jenkins signed picture. And funny story, later on, I told that story and Fergie Jenkins heard it, and he signed a picture for me and wrote like, keep negotiating and keep doing your thing, and signed a picture. So now I still have a Fergie Jenkins signed picture from Fergie. Anyways, that guy, we kept in touch after that. And so when I was visiting Trevor, I decided, I was like, hey, can I borrow your truck for the day? He was like, okay, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to Pittsburgh. So I text the guy and I said, Jay, can I get lunch with you? Can I take you to lunch? He's like, where are you? I'm like, Cleveland. He's like, okay, I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm like, I know, I'll be there tomorrow. Like, can I take you to lunch? He's like, okay. So I drive to Pittsburgh and I take him to lunch. And I was like, Jay, I need a job. I was like, I will work for free. I will wash your car. I'll babysit your kids. I just need, give me something. Like, let me get my foot in the door. And he looked at me and he said, Rachel, you're a lawyer. Don't ever offer to work for free again. And I was like, Jay, you can pay me too if you want. Like, I don't care. That would be nice. So he was like, look, Rachel, it doesn't make sense. I don't have enough work for you to move out to Pittsburgh. It would cost you a lot. Like, I don't have anything, but I would like to make a database. You know, the player side for salary arbitration was very behind the MLB side at the time. And I mean, MLB, I would say probably is still ahead. You know, he helps do a lot of the arbitration cases for the union and for agents. So he said, we need like a good database. So I will pay you on a per project basis. You can do it remotely. Build a database with all the salary arbitration cases. So I said, done. And then when I started getting close to the end of the project, Jay called me and said, hey, the MLBPA is looking to hire a lawyer to help with salary arbitration. You should apply. And I was like, Jay, I applied for a summer internship with them and I didn't get it. Like, applying to be a lawyer there, probably also not getting that. He was like, you have much different experience now that you've gone through all of these cases, so you should apply. So I applied and I got the job as a lawyer there. I was a lawyer there for about a year, and that year we took a record number of salary arbitration cases to hearing, and we came out 12-10. So we had a winning record that year, which doesn't always happen for the MLBPA, but it was an incredible experience. Jay and Trevor were incredibly vital to getting me to where I was in that moment. And there were some other people that came in later that to this day have been incredibly instrumental in my career. Trevor's been a constant throughout it all. And without those two, you know, for as much as, you know, sometimes I think when we try to champion women in sports and, you know, give them props and all of that, we don't give credit to, in a way, some of the most instrumental people in helping those women, because we can't do it without their support too. And the most helpful people in my career have been men in the industry. So as much as some have closed doors and slammed doors in my face, it's been the men who've also opened doors for me too. So we're on cloud 9 in February. Trevor signs. It's a record-breaking deal. It feels like things can't get any better. But there are evil people and there are greedy people, and when you are in the limelight and when you are a celebrity and when you are the highest paid player in baseball or in North American sports, you're a target.